All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for our first Connected Educator webinar series of the 2016-2017 school year. A happy start to the school year to everyone. We certainly hope that the beginning of the year has been a smooth start for you. And certainly welcome to October and welcome to Connected Educators Month. And we are certainly glad that you have taken the opportunity to be able to join us this evening for our first broadcast of the year. As always, during the presentation and after the presentation, if you have any great ideas, any thoughts about what you're hearing, or just would like to share what you are doing in your classroom or any tips and tricks as far as what you're doing in your classroom, always feel free to share those using the hashtag AoP Tech on any social media outlet. Here's the look at our agenda this evening. Just a minute, we'll open with our prayer, talk a little bit about our archive information, some brief introductions, and then get into our presentation this evening. At about 7:25, 7:30-ish, we'll break for some question and answers, and then get back into the presentation, and then again, as we are prepared to wrap up, some more question and answers, and then any closing and final remarks. So as we begin, as we do with all things, let us begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, may everything we do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help, so that all our prayers and works may begin in you and by you be happily ended. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. St. John Newman, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. As you saw in your registration information, our sessions will be archived as they have been in the past. However, this year we are changing the way that we are going to archive them. This year, all of our sessions will be archived on the AoP Tech YouTube channel. So know that during the presentation, any questions that you ask in the chat will not be displayed on the archive recording. However, if you do ask an audio question, and we recognize you, we will only recognize you by first name to be able to give you control of the microphone. On the recording, the audience would be able to hear any of the questions and answers that are being presented. Our co-host this evening, as always, we welcome back Alyssa DeVito to the co-host role, and this year I would like to introduce as our second technology integration coach pre-K to 12 for the Office of Technology in the Office of Catholic Education, Aaron Hines. Alyssa and Aaron, I hope you are both doing well tonight, and thanks for being with us.
It's great to be here.
Tonight, our featured presenter is Mrs. Kathleen Szymborski. Many of us know Kathy. Kathy is a great friend of ours. Kathy from Archbishop Bryan is the ELA chair, certainly 25 plus years in the Archdiocese and 20 plus years at Ryan. Kathy is a Google certified educator and a featured blogger in the Penn Literacy Network. And you can follow Kathy at her Twitter handle there on the screen. And Kathy, without further ado, I am going to kick everything over to you in just 1 second. I'm going to make the handoff right now. And Kathy, you should have the controls coming over to you now. So Kath, thanks for all of your preparation tonight, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bill, and I'd like to thank everybody who's here tonight. I know it's a time of year where school, the newness of school is winding down, and the reality that we are in for the long haul is setting in. So I do thank you for spending some time tonight to talk about one of my new favorite things. What I'd like to cover with you tonight are, in the first half, is really about what is a growth mindset and some details with it, and in the second half to get into some things that are applicable to the classroom. So the majority of the concepts we're going to hit early on, and then we're going to settle down and spend some time thinking about how we could make this work in our classes. Oops. So recently, research has indicated the truth behind what we've always thought about, that there's a relationship between beliefs and behaviors, a relationship between what we believe and how we act. For example, just saying that you cannot do something almost guarantees the likelihood that you won't be able to do that. We all say things like that to ourselves at some point. It's just human nature. But the more negative things we say, the more likely it is we believe them. And that idea, this idea between what we think and how we act, the relationship between that, is what drives a lot of the educational research that we're going to take a look at tonight. I know Alyssa sent out a link to a 6-minute video by Angela Duckworth. Angela Duckworth is a professor from U of P. She actually is a great person. I remember she's retweeted me and responded to me, so I thought that was pretty neat. The video, I think, is very telling. I really like the part where she explains that she's not really sure exactly how to help people develop grit. She did all this research with cadets at West Point, with adults, with children, and her driving question was, what is it that makes people successful? What is it that she can uncover that's the key to success? And the thing that she found out is that the thing they all have in common is this idea of grit. She describes grit as the ability to continue working on something long term despite setbacks or difficulty. And through her research, she found that grit, not IQ, not talent, was the most effective predictor of success. And although some people can be born with it, she had some interesting things to say about the only way that she's aware of that we can foster grit. She says that it's important for us to really take a good look at how we can, and I like how she says this, get grittier about teaching our students to become gritty. But she did say that the only way that she really knew how to help kids see perseverance and develop persistence and to see them as key factors in learning was to have them be able to tolerate setbacks and tolerate obstacles and not give up. So she said that what was interesting is that the only way that she knows of that we can teach our students to be gritty is to help them develop a growth mindset. And at this point, I'm going to hand the presentation back to Alyssa. She's going to show this quick video for us.
Hi everyone. So I hope you can see my screen in here so I can show you this video from Carol Dweck.
Imagine ourselves 400 years ago. They had about a 15% literacy rate. And I suspect that if you were to talk to someone who could read back then and ask them what percentage of the population do you think is capable of reading, they might have said, well, maybe 20%, 25%. Now, you fast forward 400 years, we know that that's a wildly pessimistic prediction or assumption. That's actually 99.99% of the population is capable of reading. Well, what similar blinders do we have on today? So I'm excited to have Carol Dweck here, one of my personal heroes, and who's strongly influenced a lot of work at Khan Academy. Carol, great to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, Sal.
So what I'd like to start off with, this word growth mindset, which I believe you came up with. Mm-hmm. When did you come up with that? What was the motivation, and what is it?
A growth mindset is when students believe that their abilities can be developed. A fixed mindset is when they think, I just have a certain amount and that's it.
And this isn't just kind of feel-good talk. This is actually based in science, that the brain actually does grow stronger. Neural connections actually do form when you struggle.
In study after study, we have shown that kids who have a growth mindset get higher grades. It's not a choice between the outcome and the mindset. It shows that if kids engage deeply and effectively in a learning process, The grades and test scores are a natural byproduct. Kids who are praised for their intelligence, our research shows, don't want a challenge afterwards. They don't want to work hard on something. And if they hit difficulty, that's it. We find that when we praise or parents praise a process the child engages in, their hard work, but not just hard work, their strategies, their ideas, their focus, their perseverance, then the student learns these are the ingredients of success. If it gets harder, I'll just do these things. We've already done work with you of inserting growth mindset statements before math problems. And we found together that kids did better.
So one thing that I hope is the folks listening to these videos go out there and tell their parents, tell their children, tell their peers, tell their teachers, tell their students about growth mindset. Tell them that their brain grows when they get a question wrong, when they struggle, when they look at their errors and they say, hey, that's interesting. You shouldn't be ashamed of your mistake. You should view that as something that's interesting, something to explore. And when you do that, you will actually physically form neural connections. Your brain will actually grow.
All right. Kathy, I'm going to kick that back over to you right now so you can continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Alyssa. I appreciate that. So that video, that short video, gives us a lot of things to unpack and to look at. Let's start, first of all, by making sure that we have a clear understanding of the two terms, fixed mindset and growth mindset. For years, we believed that the single best predictor of academic success was IQ. And we believed that IQ was something that was static, something that never changed. And so we developed ways of looking at people in terms of their IQ. Little did we know that we were actually fostering fixed mindsets. A fixed mindset is when people believe that the only way they can be good at something is when they have a talent for it. They believe that no amount of work or effort will make them smarter or better at doing something. It's the idea that success is really out of our control. It's the idea that we were given a certain amount of something at birth, and that was it. Nothing that we could do would change our ability to learn, something that we were not naturally gifted to do. On the other hand, growth mindset is the belief that intelligence can in fact be developed. It's the idea that we can learn things that we are not naturally gifted in if we're passionate about working hard to do that. Dedication, perseverance, grit, these are all the factors of growth mindset, the idea that we can develop our abilities. In addition to the obvious educational benefits and the ones we'll get into a little bit later, there are also personal aspects that are benefits to having a growth mindset. The link at the bottom will take you to a whole list of things. Alyssa will send all this out to you later on. But before we go any further, let's think about the good things, the other ways, the other benefits for adopting a growth mindset. People with a growth mindset are happier. They enjoy life more. Research says that people who have a growth mindset have good self-esteem because they believe that hard work and resilience is something that can lead them to learn anything. People with a growth mindset are less likely to not be stressed about having to be perfect. They are confident and they are willing to try things that are hard. People with a growth mindset are not afraid of failure. An important thing to notice, though, and this is where there's a lot of buzz against growth mindset, is that developing a growth mindset is more than just saying, I'm going to try harder, or more than us saying to a child or one of our students, if you only tried harder, you'd do better. We're going to get into the details about that in the second half, but what's very important to note is that nobody is just growth mindset or just fixed mindset. We vacillate, we fluctuate between the two, and it's important for us to be able to develop a way to recognize the times then we're approaching things with a fixed mindset, and recognize the times when we're approaching things with a growth mindset. I had a great opportunity to learn the difference between this. One of the most important aspects to a growth mindset is the way we react to failure. And everybody fails. We know that. We all know that. At one time or another, many of us have had situations where we failed and we've learned from our mistakes. Sometimes, though, those failures have made us angry or resentful, and sometimes it may have made us say to ourselves, hey, you know, we're just no good at that. But I'm going to tell you, and I apologize to the people out there who have heard this story twice, 3 times, 10 times, but this is probably my most epic and visible failure. And ironically, it's the one that actually has led me to a great change. So a few years ago, several colleagues and I were planning to attend a boot camp to work on Google certification, and it didn't happen. It fell through. I remember Jim Meredith telling us that it was canceled. So we were kind of disappointed, and we kind of agreed that we would work on this together, that we would each take sections and teach each other. And there were 6 or 7 people, and one by one people dropped out because of responsibilities at home in the summer, you know, and it was like all of us, it was just too much to take that commitment. So 6 people turned to 5, to 4, to 2, to Nancy, who is now the academic affairs principal at Ryan, and me. So we thought we could do it. So we both talked about this. We both worked through all the Google modules that they had for certification. I remember learning some really interesting new things, and I really got to say that I thought I knew most of it. There were very few things that were new to me, and I felt pretty confident that I had nailed this section, and I was going to be able to pass this test. So we talked a lot about this, and we decided that we would test together in the summer at school, so that we could kind of meet in a common territory, and that we would take the test together, you know, opposite each other, because when you take the test, your face shows up in a video camera, and you know, you can't cheat or anything. You have to, you know, have your face in the window. But we thought it would be fun to do it together, or more supportive. So, you know, occasionally we would look up at each other and be like, you know, giving each other a little moral support. I thought the test was pretty straightforward. I was confident I was doing well. We were moving along. It's a pretty long test. I was done. I pushed the button. I thought, here we go. I'm going to get my badge. And then I get this message. I failed. Wow. I told Nancy, and she was sort of shocked, and she was maybe a little bit concerned because she wasn't done yet. She hadn't finished the test. And I said, just keep going. And she pressed the submit button, and we both held our breath. And she looked at me, and she said, sort of with an apologetic look on her face, I passed. So I don't know who was more upset, Nancy or me. My stomach dropped. I was angry. I remember driving home being so upset. I was never going to try this again. This was ridiculous. I don't need this in my life. Why was I doing this to myself? Who needs this certification? I don't need a piece of paper telling me what I know. And then I started processing some of the questions. I'm like, they're so stupid. They ask these stupid questions like, can you print from a Chromebook? Well, no, not really, but yes, you can. So how ambiguous a question is that? And, you know, everything was everybody else's fault but my own. I even wrote a letter to the testing company complaining about that question, and they wrote back this letter like, lady, we don't make the questions, we just give the test. I was a little embarrassed about that. But I thought, there's no way I'm doing this. I remember calling Gene Carboni, and he's like, Kath, you'll do it. Don't worry. You'll try it again. I'm like, never, Gene. I'm never doing this again. I don't need this. They don't know how to make tests, blah, blah, blah. And then slowly, over a couple of days, it started to bother me that it bothered me, you know, like it bothered me. It made me upset that I got that upset. So I was like, okay, let's look at this again. So I opened up the modules. I started taking notes. I reworked things. I tweaked things. I did passages or sections sometimes twice just to make sure I got it. I went through it methodically, carefully, thoughtfully. When it came time to press submit, I was pretty optimistic. I had warned my husband to stay away from me, keep me, you know, stay alone so that there's no distraction. I pressed the button and I did pass. So that experience, it actually took me a little bit of time to process it, but it made me realize that I actually had lived a transformation from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. I tried and I failed, and I was done with it. That idea of being done with it, I don't need this, that is so fixed mindset. Slowly, I changed. It took a while. I was pretty stubborn about never doing this again. If you don't believe me, you can ask Jean. And eventually, I tried some new things. I worked a little differently, and I passed. I passed because I persisted. I persevered. I was gritty. It was a down and dirty process, let me tell you, working on that module in my kitchen, but hard work and resilience won out. So I gained a whole lot more that day than Google certification. You know, I gained a true view into what a growth mindset is like. I'm sure we all have our own stories. You all have stories of different times you failed, and feel free to put them in the chat window, and maybe we can talk about them a little bit later. Another important key part from the video with Sal Khan and Carol Dweck is that he was pointing out, you know, something that they pointed out on the video clip we watched was this concept of neuroplasticity. What scientists have discovered is that every time we think, say, or do something, we create pathways in our brains. The more often we think, say, or do that thing, the more pronounced that pathway becomes. So actually it becomes easier and more likely over time to revert to those thoughts, words, and actions. When we introduce a different way, a new way of thinking or saying or doing that same thing, it creates another new pathway, but it takes time for that second pathway to become, in a sense, bigger. The more we persist with new ways of thinking, saying, and doing, the stronger that connection becomes. If we do that enough, that pathway becomes the stronger one and the one we are more likely to choose. Here's the catch. Growth mindset is not just about trying harder. It's about trying new things. And those new things, trying those new things, are what create new neural networks. When we work through our mistakes and find new ways to approach them, that's when we rewire our brains. One of the most important things that we have to become aware of when we're trying to develop a growth mindset is to be aware of that inner voice, that one in our head. Now, if you have more than one voice talking to you, it might be something we need to talk about privately, but that one voice that's always telling you things like, you're no good at that, you're not good enough for this, you can't do that. That inner voice, that recognition of that voice is what we have to catch ourselves doing. We have to stop ourselves while we're thinking those fixed mindset phrases and purposefully replace them with growth mindset phrases. There's a loop involved with this. The more you say you're no good at it, the more you are no good at it. The more you say you are no good at it, the more you are no good at it. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It works the other way too. The more success you feel, the better you are at it, and you can continue that way. That loop, that self-talk, is one of the first steps. Dweck says that we have to hear the voice in our head and recognize the internal fixed mindset, and we have to change it. And she gives this following example on her website, Mindset Online. She says, here's an example of fixed mindset. This would have been a snap if you really had talent. And a growth mindset, is represented by this. That is so wrong. Basketball wasn't easy for Michael Jordan, and science wasn't easy for Thomas Edison or Edison. They had a passion and they put in tons of effort. So that element of self-talk is critical to the whole idea of developing growth mindset, becoming aware of it and changing it. And this is a point where we can take a little break and open it up for Q&A.
Great, Kathy. Thank you. Kathy, we may need to talk after this. I sometimes have 3 or 4 voices in my head. But at this point, if anybody has any questions that you would like to ask Kathy, feel free on your control panel. On the left-hand side, there is a little hand with an arrow pointing up. You can click on that hand, and we will see that you have a question and come over and give you an opportunity to be able to ask that. While we look to see if there are any questions, Alyssa, anything going on over in the chat window? Any questions taking place there?
We're great over here in the chat window, all quiet on the question front, though feel free to send them to Aaron and I as well. It just means that Kathy's doing a great job.
Excellent. And Kathy, it doesn't look like we have any questions at this point. Certainly, I'm sure we'll have a couple at the end. So why don't you feel free to continue?
Okay, well, thank you. So let's talk about the relationship of growth mindset and teaching. As teachers, we're probably already thinking about how this could help us in a classroom. I mean, it's pretty obvious how to help kids buy into this idea of growth mindset. But before we even get started in that, there was some research done by a group of people at Education Week, and they published this detailed report from teachers of all grades, from all kinds of schools, whom they surveyed about growth mindset. And what they found is that almost every teacher surveyed saw the amazing potential Carol Dweck's work held for a classroom. And really, the ideas of effort and persistence are ones that we've always taught forever. They're old skills. They're an old set of strategies. But Dweck's work and Duckworth's work gives us a framework to approach how we use it in our classrooms. On a whole, though, teachers are at a loss as to how to create that in a classroom. So let's talk about a couple of things that we can do to help our students develop growth mindsets and become better learners. To me, the obvious first step is that as teachers, we have to develop our own practice with growth mindset. We need to think hard about our self-talk and also about our comfort with risk and failure. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be honest about the need as teachers to continually learn. If we think that we know all that there is to being an effective teacher, then we're stuck in a fixed mindset. To embrace a growth mindset, we need to step out of our comfort zones. We need to look at not what we know, but what we don't know. We need to experience firsthand that cognitive dissonance that deep learning requires. We need to be in our kids' shoes before we can even think about bringing this to our classroom. We need to go out of our way to be uncomfortable. To me, trying to create a classroom environment that fosters growth mindset without the teacher having a growth mindset is like trying to teach writing without the teacher knowing how to write. Growth mindset requires hard, persistent, gritty work and lots of honesty. When you catch yourself saying things to yourself, and Bill, we will talk later, that one voice saying, I don't need to know that. Stop and challenge yourself. Why are you saying that? Do you really know what it's all about? Are you afraid to look at it because you don't want to be uncomfortable? Is it something that you're thinking, I don't want to try that. I don't need to know that. I'm so far without that. I don't need to take a risk and look stupid or be a failure in front of other people. Honestly, I think this is the hardest part. in becoming a teacher in a growth mindset classroom. It's really, it all starts with the teacher, and it all starts with being honest with yourself. And I don't know about you, but I have plenty of mistakes I make. Becoming honest about them and facing them, that's a little harder. So research has told us explicitly that teaching kids about how the brain works, even just doing that, to teach them about neuroplasticity, to teach them about growth mindset, that they are key to fostering a growth mindset in our students. To take some time out of class to actually teach students all about this research is one way to begin in a classroom fostering growth mindset. Now, Khan Academy has great resources for students of all levels to begin to understand how their brain works. Teaching students how difficult learning is and how it is a process, not a one and done thing, is essential in helping them to experience all those good things, all those benefits of having a growth mindset, of having more self-esteem, of being more comfortable with themselves, of being happier, of being not having to be perfect. Recently, well, this school year, I started off both my AP English classes and my college prep class with growth mindset, and in fact I'm still in growth mindset. So the way I was able to use it as an ELA teacher is I'm able to use it as writing fodder. So the kids are presently either revising or finishing writing a paper at different levels all about growth mindset and how it relates to them. So I figured, you know, I will get to my American Lit, but the most important thing I teach are children. And the second thing I teach is the content. So I'm able to actually teach the skills that I need, reading, writing, listening, speaking skills, through the resources that I've given them, some videos, some text, different things, a lot of talking, a lot of listening, a lot of sharing, a lot of thinking, and all of that through the lens of growth mindset. But we can't stop at our students. I'm so excited about growth mindset that obviously I think it's important to teach it to my colleagues. And I want you to teach it to your colleagues and to the parents of your students. I put a link in my course description online for parents about growth mindset. And a couple of parents have already contacted me about how they like the things that this is saying. Teach it to your administrators. If your administrators don't know about it, bring it. School will be a happier place if everybody buys into the idea that with hard work and new strategies, we can learn anything. Anything. Anyone can learn anything. Imagine that. Imagine what the kids' faces would be like if instead of, you know, being upset that they're failing something, they turn it and say that with the right work and with the right attitude, I really can do this, and to give them the tools to do that. So one of the biggest hurdles in helping students develop a growth mindset has to do with them hearing that voice in their heads, and the voice in their head. And Bill, I do make that joke all the time. But having them hear that voice requires us to model it, and it requires us to model that self-talk. Nothing shows it better than modeling it. So when you catch yourself saying something in your head that you know, has all the signs of a fixed mindset, just tell them. Tell them the good, tell them the bad, tell them the ugly. Talk out loud so they can hear it, so that when they themselves have those thoughts, they will know how to deal with them. They'll know how to turn them around. Another thing that is good to do is to challenge them to write down fixed mindset statements as they occur to them. I'm no good at math. I'll never learn this. I hate school. I'm not a student. And then as a class, turn those statements into growth mindset statements. Put them on posters, put them on the board. I have liquid chalk, and I have a saying up there that I try to change at the beginning of every month, and I'm trying to do it all about growth mindset, so that even decorations become a way of instilling them with the ideas behind it. Keep a poster or keep a chart full of growth mindset statements that they can refer to when their mind starts to get stuck in a fixed position. And catch yourself, again, that real time when you're feeling it yourself, when you're feeling that fixed mindset, you know, stop and talk about it to make it transparent for your students. And I think that this is really key. So if we're not just praising kids for hard work and effort, but if we're training them to look at failures as opportunities to do something different, it's important that we take time to teach explicit strategies for solving problems in the content area and in thinking in general. And every subject has a hidden set of ways that people who are good at that subject know how to do. So the catch here is to make available for everyone, to equalize the playing ground, to make available all those secret little things. For those of us who had the opportunity to take some classes with the Penn Literacy Network, one thing they'll say a lot is, you know, make visible the invisible processes. And as high school teachers that were starting all the Marzano training and the monitoring workshop we just had, being, you know, when kids are not getting it, helping them figure out different ways that they can figure it out. So spending some time debriefing student errors gives the opportunity to revisit different approaches, whether you need to offer literacy strategies or subject-specific strategies. Make visible that invisible process that successful folks know. When I ask kids to revise their writing, for example, many of them don't know where to begin. They look it over, they might look for some periods or a spelling word, and they've revised it. Teaching them to revise using, for example, the acronym RADAR, which is something from Kelly Gallagher, meaning replace, add, delete, and reorder. It gives them a specific way to approach revision. RIDE, the acronym RIDE, is a strategy for problem solving. Read the problem carefully, identify relevant information, determine operation and unit, enter correct numbers, and calculate. I tap some of my math friends. PEDMAS, I hope I'm saying that right, deals with order of operations, and I even found out what it means. You do your work, parentheses, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. I know there's a little something in there that I forgot to say, so for math people, I'm sorry. Another math teacher likes KFC, and it's not the chicken, but it stands for keep, flip, and change for dividing fractions. The strategies that we're talking about are nothing new. They may have different names from 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You can make up your own name to it, but it's that idea of figuring out the step-by-step process that helps somebody to do something that we just kind of take for granted. It's that connecting of the dots. It gives them the tools to figure out how they can become better. In classrooms where information like this is provided, students have the ability to think about how they can rework something that's a failure into something that's successful. Okay, this paper wasn't very good. Let me start with, you know, on the sentence level, let me start with radar. Or, oh, I totally messed up that problem. Let me look at the order of operations. Modeling how to revise sentences or modeling how to rework a problem. Your students will develop not only that toolkit, but they'll also develop perseverance, and they'll be less likely to give up because they'll have some way to begin. My CPL, my college prep kids, are really a mixed bunch track-wise, and I have a wide variety of ability levels and skill levels in that class. And we were starting, you know, to write this paper, and I asked them, you know, what their writing was like up to now. How did they approach writing? And without exception, every one of them told me that the way they wrote their paper is the night before it was due, they sat down and wrote it, and that was it. And I said, yeah, how's that working for you? And they laughed because they realized it's not working for them. So, you know, we talked about it a little bit more openly, and I said, you know, is it procrastination? Is it, you know, you're not interested? And yeah, that's certainly some of it for a few of the kids. But most of them admitted that they just didn't know where to begin. They couldn't figure out where to start. And these are kids that we've been teaching at Ryan for years with all kinds of place. So sometimes it takes a whole effort across the board in every classroom for kids to start to realize that they have the ability, they have the tools, they just need to work at it. I kind of think that without giving kids a set of tools, we're sort of setting them up for failure. So, how can we foster growth mindset in a related way? Reworking your classroom routines, our classroom routines, to reward process over product sets up a situation where learning is valued over grades. Dweck talks about a school, and I'm sorry I didn't put the link here, but you can find it, or I can add it later and Alyssa will send it out. A school that has this idea of something called not yet. Nobody gets a failure in that school. If a child doesn't have the material, isn't passing, they get a grade of not yet. Any student that hasn't mastered a particular skill set gets not yet. The emphasis is on learning as a continuum to help students, and using that not yet makes kids see that we mean what we say. If you didn't get it, you will get it. You just haven't gotten it yet. We're going to keep working until you get it. Eventually, anybody will master the material. All they need is to persist and just try different ways to demonstrate, and so we need to help them demonstrate that. Not only is this a great lesson for the classroom, but it's a great lesson for life, isn't it? Of course, thinking like this might make us reconsider how we grade. And that leads me into my next point. I don't know if you've heard of Benjamin Zander, but he's a famous conductor and music teacher, and this is linked, the video is linked for you to see later on your own time. But what he does is in the beginning of a school year, he teaches music to talented people. He tells his students, everybody gets an A. The only catch is that he requires them to write a letter to him early in the semester delineating why they deserve the A. And he finds that not only does this set the bar high, not only does it make people reach further than they thought they could, but it stops the voice in the head. It stops that voice in the head that his students hear when they think they're not talented enough, or they're not good enough, or they're never going to be able to get through this set of music without making a mistake. Students can rise to the expectations of an A because their self-talk changes from fixed mindset to growth mindset. Instead of them saying to themselves, I'm not talented enough, they reflect on how they can improve their skills to bring themselves to higher levels, to greater success. These are some ways, just a few sample ways, and there's tons of them available online, of ways to give growth mindset feedback that praise the process and the effort and not the ability or the trait. I know I have a hard time. I'm sorry, I just had to take a sip of water. I find myself saying a lot, oh my goodness, you're so smart. Like, I don't know why I'm doing that, because it's obviously not the right thing to do. And as I catch it, sometimes if I've taught growth mindset, I'll say, there I go again, and they'll laugh. But just that shift of, I really like how hard you worked at that and that you didn't give up, or what a creative solution, or look at how much perseverance you did. That kind of praise is extremely important for the classroom that has a growth mindset. I think equally important for developing a classroom with growth mindset is the metacognitive piece, that reflection, that piece of reflection. So much of this transformation from fixed to growth takes place in the invisible world of the brain. It's very important that we try to make that growth visible on paper. Both teachers and students need to develop the habit of looking at what happens in the classroom, not as whether it worked or not, whether it was correct or not, but what they learned in the process. Maybe as a writing teacher, I have it easier because kids understand when I say, you know, nobody ever writes a perfect paper. And my colleagues, when we write, we always say we're constantly reworking it. We're changing words up to the last minute of putting something out there that we might have to put out. And I know that even things like I do in my blog, I might go back 6 weeks later and find a mistake and change it, or maybe a different idea, or I didn't like the way I worded that. So it's about the process, that nothing is ever finished. So in a writing classroom, it might be easier than a kid who's learning a content and just is looking for that 100. But emphasizing the process and creating these opportunities for reflection is another way to foster that growth mindset. In fact, writing about the experience of working through something that could be considered wrong and making it correct has implications that are far more extensive than just the subject matter. If we get kids to write, you know, I didn't do this, I failed at this, but then I tried this, and then I tried this, and then I tried this, and then it worked, the implications that that those implications include the fact that we can help students see that learning occurs in different ways and in different places, and we can have them reflect on the ways to make their learning stronger. And if we can do all that, then what we are doing is creating a generation of problem solvers. If we develop in them the habit of looking at all of the things they did and all of the ways they tried to get to the end of that problem, we've created lifelong learners. Concentrating on how they're able to move from not yet to yet will help them develop their own set of problem-solving skills that can transfer to other subjects and other areas outside of school. So in a way, this piece, the metacognitive piece, has great implications because it helps us equip those kids for real life. Because you and I know that in life there can't be failures in certain things, and work has to be done, and you have to succeed at it, and you have to get it done to a certain point. And knowing that with hard work and strategies, that's the key. It's those strategies. It's those ways of working things out that people, many people take for granted if they happen to have talent in that area. But that talent isn't enough to have them necessarily succeed. It's the hard work and the looking for the possible solutions that fosters this growth mindset. All right, let's recap for a minute here. So we started with Angela Duckworth. She says grit is the key to success. And she says that Carol Dweck's growth mindset is the only way that we know how to teach grit. And we know that our beliefs drive our behavior. So the way to change those beliefs is through rewiring our brains. And we know that because of neuroplasticity, which is a scientific fact, that every time we find other ways to approach learning, we create new neural pathways. A growth mindset makes us aware of our self-talk, and it helps us create new neural pathways. We also found out that we know that there are some ways that we can create a classroom environment that fosters growth mindset in our students. We need to practice it ourselves. We need to model it. We need to teach explicitly about brain research and learning. We need to teach strategies in our content and in learning in general. We need to praise the process over the product. And perhaps most importantly, we need to provide opportunities for our students to reflect on the ways that they solve academic problems and life problems through using those strategies in a persistent, gritty way. Easy, right? No, but that tiny change from saying that I can't do it to, with some hard work and a new way of looking at it, I can succeed. That can make all the difference. And it can make all the difference in our students' self-esteem, in their happiness, and extension in our own happiness, because what makes us happier, than a classroom full of kids that want to be there, that feel successful, and that know how to find that success. So at this point, before we open it up for any other possible questions, I'd like to point out some resources here. They're all linked so that when you get the presentation, you'll be able to go into them. Carol Dweck's Mindset website is really interesting. If you, as an adult, there's lots of information on there. It has great implications. Mindset has great implications for the business world. It is really hitting the business world hard and heavy because it's about problem solving. It's about persistence. It's about finding a new way if something doesn't work. Angela Duckworth's website is really neat. It even has a grit test on there, a grit scale that lets kids or adults see just how gritty they are, and it has lots of other resources. The Khan Academy Growth Mindset Lesson Plan is great. Actually, I think the video that I showed you earlier, or that Alyssa showed you, is from that set of plans. PERT's lab is Stanford University's growth mindset lab, I guess, from Carol Dweck. They're also a very heavy presence on Twitter. They have really neat ideas, and they're just great people, and there's a lot of nice stuff there. And the Edutopia resource, or the Edutopia page, has tons of resources for all kinds of things about growth mindset and different subjects and different ways to teach it. Just before we began the presentation, I saw on Twitter a tweet about bringing growth mindset in the arts, and I will forward that to Alyssa too, so that if anybody at the presentation, anybody here tonight in the webinar is in the arts, it might be something you might want to read. But I'd like to thank you very much for listening to me. It's something that I find myself very passionate about on a personal level. It has impacted me as a person, and it has also impacted my classroom practice. And I hope that, you know, it's something that you might consider learning a little bit more about. And I welcome hearing all the things that you're doing and the things that you find and the new resources that we can build together. I thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it back to Alyssa or Bill, who's ever going to see if there's any questions.
Well, great. Thanks, Kathy. And, you know, just as a reminder for everyone, Kathy mentioned it, tomorrow night, just about this time, you'll receive an email with all of the resources that you've seen here today, or that were mentioned in Kathy's great presentation this evening. And that will come across to you from the GoToWebinar platform as an automatic email tomorrow night. Kathy, you know, thank you for all of your work in you know, getting ready for this presentation. Certainly your passion for this topic comes across very clearly, and especially for, you know, for all of us as educators, not only for our own self-reflective ability to be able to develop this, but certainly, you know, that challenge that we face in the classroom every day of changing that mindset of our students to become a growth mindset, and for their desire to become that continual learner is certainly important. So thank you very much. If anybody does have any questions, we'd certainly love to take the opportunity to give you the microphone at this point and ask Kathy any questions, or maybe even share any you know, any resources or thoughts that you have. And while you prep those, Alyssa, anything that happened, Alyssa and Aaron, anything that happened over in the question window that you may want to bring up now?
One thing that I wanted to share, someone pointed out that Socratic questioning, when we were talking earlier about some of those acronyms and different teaching strategies, that Socratic questioning or Socratic seminar, if that's something that you're utilizing in your classroom, that's also a great way to help promote growth mindset. Those students have to answer those questions, and sometimes they might get frustrated along the way, but it's really them who are working out, and then that sense of pride when they kind of get unstuck from that. So that's another great way that you can be utilizing growth mindset along with a content area strategy in there.
Excellent. Thanks, Alyssa. Does anybody have any questions? Again, on your control panel that's floating off on the right-hand side, right on that left little pane that's sticking out right on the bottom of that, you'll see the hand icon with the up arrow. That will give you the opportunity to raise your hand to ask a question. Okay, Kath, it looks like you satisfied everyone's curiosity, and certainly did a great job of putting in meaningful and relevant information in this presentation within the time frame. So again, I'd really like to thank you for all the preparation and the time that you put into this presentation tonight.
Oh, thank you.
And we do have one question. Jim, I'm going to come over and unmute you. Jim, you have the microphone.
Yeah, it's not really a question.
Did we lose Jim?
Oh, Kath, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for a great presentation and opening up some ideas for the rest of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Jim. It's my pleasure.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. All right. Well, that looks like all of the questions for this evening. Kathy, Alyssa, or Aaron, any final thoughts that you would like to leave our participants with this evening?
Keep growing.
Yes, and I think that's an excellent statement, especially at the beginning of the school year, to keep the energy moving. So I really like that concept of growth mindset.
And I think for me, something that Kathy talked about that always sticks with me is that it has to start with us as educators in our classroom if we want our students to feel that same way. So reminding ourselves sometimes to let go of those negatives and embrace those failures when they happen, because it's okay. So that always speaks to me. So I hope that speaks to you as well.
Excellent. And just as a reminder for everyone, Alyssa popped in our survey into the chat window, and this will also be sent out tomorrow as well in the email that you will receive. But certainly as we start off our second year, we continue to look for opportunities and ways to be able to improve these offerings for all of our teachers within the Archdiocese. So we value your feedback and look forward to that opportunity to be able to receive it. And Ro, I see that you have a question, so I'm going to come over and unmute you now. Ro, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, very well done, Kathy. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, Ro.
And this does count. This does work for people over that great age of 60.
It does. Yes, you know it does, Ro. You experience it.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to say anything personal.
Well, guess what? No, you know what? And I believe that quote early on was that Aristotle, "Be the change"?
Yes. Was it? Or no, it's Gandhi, isn't it?
Is it Gandhi? There's something, Aristotle said something very similar to that, because I was thinking the Greeks just seem to know it all.
Somebody does, that's for sure. Thank you, Ro.
Yeah, thanks again. It was very, very articulate. Well done.
Thanks, Ro.
You're welcome.
You knew them both, didn't you, Ro? Gandhi and Aristotle?
Oh.
And Jim quickly mutes his microphone there. Well, thanks again, everyone. Kathy, again, thank you for everything. And we hope everyone has a wonderful Thursday, great end of the week, and a relaxing and blessed weekend. So thanks, everyone, for participating this evening, and look for in the resources that you receive tomorrow, not only all the presentation resources, but the AoP Tech expanded offerings for the 2016-17 school year. So have a great one, everyone. Thank you.